people will do the Disney princess quiz. Like now on Instagram, they've got the thing, you're like holding it up, it's like, which Disney character? We're all okay with that.
Yeah.
But if you kind of do it to apply to marketing, it does feel like a little limiting, you know, from a like ego standpoint, like, you know, we're all unique snowflakes. But
We should update the brand archetypes and make it about Disney brand princess archetypes.
yeah. Hey everybody, welcome again to another episode of Bourbon and Brand, where we talk candidly about business, branding, and wherever else the bourbon takes us. Today we are still sucking down this bottle of Fox River bourbon from A2 Distillery. In the meantime, I'm Matt, and this is Hien.
So, before we get into today's episode, as always, if you're enjoying the content, make sure to hit the subscribe button below or ring that bell.
Ring it.
Ring it. Ring a ding ding. And cheers.
Cheers.
To a new year, actually.
To a new year.
Yeah.
New year and more than one episode of this thing
Yeah.
exists, so that's pretty exciting.
It's 2020.
Yeah. You have to drink after you.
That's true, yeah. Well, with 2020 being all about clarity, we're going to clear some stuff up today about brand archetypes.
Yeah, so brand archetypes are kind of a word that floats around in our industry quite a bit, but nobody really ever talks about it. I know even when we dove into it, it was like, you know, kind of this brand archetypes idea, but nobody really talked about it. So we'll do a little background. Kind of comes from, not kind of, literally comes from Carl Jung. He created 12.
The OG himself.
Yeah, he did it. He did other things as well, but we don't care about
Yeah,
those.
who gives a shit?
He created kind of 12 archetypes of just mythical characters. Examples of that are like the creator, the everyman, the sage, the rebel, the hero, etc. And
My personal favorite is the rebel.
the rebel. Yeah, are you actually a rebel?
I want to believe I am.
Yeah.
I want to believe that's my archetype.
Yeah, it's like there's an archetype for people who want to believe they're rebels. Not just kidding. I don't think that's one of the 12. But we didn't name them all, but you can probably kind of roughly figure them out. I think that's why they can ultimately be effective for people, is because they do just kind of make a lot of sense once you talk about them a little bit. So we're going to do that a little bit today. Each of them symbolize kind of human psyche and subconscious in some way. They have their own goals, beliefs, and values, and it helps us better understand, you know, within 12 slices of a pie, kind of who each of us are as individuals.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where the value of brand archetypes come in. As you said, like you and I, when we first introduced to it, we thought, what is this? What's the value of this? And ultimately, they're really valuable because, as we all know, the brands that are most successful are the ones that resonate with people, and the best way to do with that is to build a connection.
Yeah.
And people connect with brands that they see reflect their own values, their goals, you know, things that every one of these archetypes have. So that's kind of where brand archetypes become really valuable for your brand.
Yeah.
Is that you can define a brand archetype for your customers and especially for your own self, so then you can create that resonance. Yeah, and at the end of the day, like what you're doing with your brand archetype is that you're helping define your personality for your brand. Like we talked about the rebellious one being my personal favorite. I'm sure Matt loves that one too.
I do.
It's hard to be a rebel if like your tone of voice, which is part of your personality, is super authoritative and professional sounding, when really the language should be about, you know, breaking out of the box and not following the rules. Rules are there to be broken, not rules to be followed. Right? That would feel incongruent, and you wouldn't be getting rebellious types of people.
Right. Yeah. If we were the rebellious archetype and took our suits off on the way in here and then rebelled for like 15 minutes, it might not be a very accurate understanding of who we are and what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And it's probably always helpful to give a couple examples of brand, like well-known brands, and what their archetype would be.
Don't do Apple.
Yeah, we are adamantly against using Apple as options here. So if you're watching the show, if ever we mention Apple as an example for a brand, you should give us crap underneath in the comments. Like we like failed somehow, because we just think they're a terrible example because they're just so well known that they can be anything they want. But with that said, we'll pick an Apple-like brand here. For an example, Nike.
Yeah.
another huge brand. And hopefully you know who they are. If you don't, you should figure that out. But their brand archetype would be a hero, right? Because they're really about empowerment. To bring out the athlete in everyone. It's all about supporting those who are super driven to hit a goal. Another example, maybe one slightly less well known as a Nike, but still well known as Airbnb.
Yeah.
They're about the everyman. They're all about belonging, building that connection. I think their slogan is literally like belong in the world or belong anywhere.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So, like using these archetypes, these brands are able to kind of create their voice, their personality, and build that connection with people. And each one of these have competitors, but they stand out, like on their own because of the fact that they do have these brand archetypes.
Yeah, I love that you use that Airbnb. I think Nike's out there, and like you said, people know it, are feverishly Googling it, so they don't feel weird, I guess, at this point. But like kind of Airbnb people, they'll like tell you about it. In a way they're anti-hotel. It's not really like a traditional rebellious way, but they actually value not being in a hotel.
Yeah.
They value being next to people who live in that place, so that they can feel like you're actually experiencing wherever that location is versus kind of a hotel version of it.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the brand archetypes and using Airbnb as a continuation of the example and further is that it gives you constraints to really build your brand around. And Airbnb is more than just renting an apartment somewhere. Like they've added additional experience. They call it experiences, I think. Built around this idea of the everyman, of belonging and connection. They have experiences you can do with local tour guides, local guides for learning how to cook or whatever. All really kind of built around this, like how can we continue to be this everyman, continue to foster this belonging and connection. And Nike does really the same thing with them wanting to let everybody be a hero in their own story.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think for both of these, especially Nike, just known as one of the greatest sort of marketing machines in modern history, at least. But I think it has a lot to do with their ability to understand archetypes, and even with more depth than at that 1 out of 12 level. That's why they're so effective, is really being able to engage that part of each individual and connecting it to their brand in ways that make them feel cool and special, and obviously look good as well. But there's something always very powerful in their marketing that it's kind of hard to like look away from it. You either know you're in or you're out pretty quickly with them.
Yeah, and again, like gives you constraints and really lets you build that personality, build out that brand identity. Especially if you are the hero, you want to have heroic colors, right? Like it shouldn't look gloomy. The imagery should be inspiring. It shouldn't be people looking tired.
Yep.
Like they can be sweating, but sweating towards their goals, and maybe the messaging is talking about like how that sweat equity is helping them reach their New Year's resolutions, Year's, right? So things like that.
Well, even with Nike, you see kind of in the era of Colin Kaepernick and et cetera, it's like that's very much a hero sort of mentality. They're trying to boost other people they view as heroes, or like attaching themselves to social causes. We could have a whole episode of whether or not that made them money or lost them money or whatever, but you can kind of see them following down who they are, even when it's a controversial kind of thing to do.
Yeah, actually that's a really great point, because that helps further not only just with the personality, but the brand archetype can help you define your brand positioning, because not everyone is cool with the Kaepernick thing. We both think that's cool. Like we both think it's heroic what he's doing, standing for something, even if you lose everything. I think it's the slogan somewhere along those lines. But that's what a hero does, right? They have to stand up against, the odds, and not just conform. And there are going to be people who are for that message and those who aren't, which is fine. That's just what your brand should be. If you're for everyone, you're for nobody.
Yeah, and talking to, we've kind of talked so far about examples of what these famous brands and what their archetype is. But obviously, a critically important thing to do is to establish who your potential customers' archetypes are.
Right.
Once you know who you are, like how do you resonate and who do you think you'll resonate most with?
Yeah.
So just making sure you're defining that archetype for one or multiple types of customers that might align with what you're trying to do with your business.
Yeah, which perfectly segues into our next section, I think, today.
Boom.
But I am going to randomly interrupt and say, like, my piece of ice here keeps randomly popping up.
Inappropriate.
So the bourbon.
Oh, so did mine.
Yeah, so I'm drinking less of the bourbon than I want to. It feels like it's popping into my mouth, my face more than anything. So let's get into how you actually can create a brand archetype for yourself. So we have some just tips overall, how best to do this. So first starting with making sure to define the archetype for your customer because it has to be about them. Like
Yep.
you need to understand that, be able to see themselves in the brand.
Yeah, and figuring that out and understanding beyond like who your customers are, and this is where I alluded to it a little bit, kind of jumped the gun with Nike and how they're able to resonate with a lot of people, even though they might not all be other heroes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like their customers could be several of these. There might be a way that they can resonate with the sage or to some extent the everyman in different opportunities, and that's why they're so successful because they don't just say like we're finding other heroes that might primarily be who it resonates with, but they've established other ones as well. And also, the other area is understanding your customers. There might be several of these, depending on what type of business you have, but then holding it up to your competitors
Yeah,
and
exactly.
understanding what their archetype is.
That's the beauty of this tool is that like you can use it so easily across for your customers and for your competitors and for yourself. Like,
Yeah, and people like, they want to nitpick at some point. It's like, oh, we don't all fit perfectly into one of these 12. We'll talk a little bit about how you can.
Yeah, I've got a bone to pick with those people.
Yeah, we're gonna go off on that section, but I think the beauty of it only being 12 is that we're kind of just basic math here. If you figure out who you are as an archetype for your brand, you might have 2, 3 more that you focus on in terms of who your customers are, and then you're trying to figure out another one for who you think your competitors are, so you can position well against it. We were talking about this earlier. I thought you had a kind of the Ellen Oprah example that you gave was a good one that really made it resonated with me right away. I don't know if you want to share that again.
Yeah.
While we're actually recording, but I thought that was a good one.
Yeah. So I mean, like if you think about like Ellen and Oprah, like they're both talk show hosts. So that's their market and their space, but they're both vastly different in terms of how they approach the way that they host talk shows.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the right verb.
Yeah.
Ellen is more of the entertainer. That would be her archetype. She dances. She's goofy. She tells jokes. She's a comedian by trade, and Oprah's more of a sage, right? She's more about wisdom sharing, like proliferating wisdom and sharing like knowledge with people.
Yep.
And she may crack a joke here and there, but that's really not her MO. Her MO is like being able to help empower you and share knowledge.
Yeah, you don't like tune in for an Oprah episode for that reason.
Yeah.
Like you said, something funny might happen, but you'll see more like an episode is fun. But in general,
right.
Oprah it's just not the top few things you think about. Is Ellen has a stand-up background, so you kind of knew even before it came out, it was probably going to be kind of more lighthearted and entertaining,
right?
Which resonates to different people for sure.
Yeah. So if Ellen maybe came out and was try to replicate Oprah so much because she obviously has a winning formula, she's worth a lot of money, she's very influential. If Ellen tried to do the sage model while being a talk show host, people would probably be kind of confused. First of all, if they know her background, but then two, they're like, well, if I'm just going to watch a talk show host just provide wisdom and encouragement, I'll just watch Oprah because she's already nailing that.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And never go up against Oprah just in general. She could be like her own 13th archetype. Like that's the kind of influence that Oprah has. So that's a tough one to go against.
Yeah. And then the next thing that we want to mention deals around kind of like archetypes. It's about aspiration, right? Like everybody wants to be something more tomorrow than they are today. They want something. Then the more you can like scratch that itch, the more likely they're going to buy from you or subscribe to your mailing list, whatever that may be, your call to action. Mm-hmm. So really think about who your customers are tomorrow. This really does tie in a lot with like knowing your customer's archetype. Going back to that a little bit, like to kind of help clarify that some more, your brand archetype, to say you're a security system company like Nest or SimpliSafe, they might be really about, your brand archetype might be really about the creator, right? You're trying to innovate, trying to create the most like secure, powerful, secure system. People can't hack into it and talk to your baby or whatever. But like if you understand your customer's archetype, they probably don't give a fuck about that because their archetype is they want to be a caregiver, right? Like they want to take care of their family and protect their family. That's what's paramount to them. Yeah. Or maybe they want to be a ruler. That's another archetype that kind of falls in a similar vein, where they're about power and being in control of things, and
Mhm.
what's more out of control than having your home broken into, right? Like, so.
Yeah, that's the person that has like all the Nest stuff.
Yeah,
They've got monitors
exactly.
and locks and lights.
Yeah,
and
they have
that,
all the luxury stuff that they don't want stolen, so they
Yep.
need to protect it. So there is overlap with the ruler and the caregiver archetype if you position that correctly with the messaging. But if you don't recognize that and you go all in on the creator with your brand archetype of being a creator, like you're not really going to resonate with that audience.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think it does show, and again, you know, the more we talk about it, the more like exciting it kind of is for me to think about the value of there only being 12. Like
Mhm.
again, how they all stack up against each other. Like you just kind of put the like creator versus the ruler. And like you can always use that like juxtaposition or like, you know, like holding them up against one another to see, does the messaging make sense? Is my product for both of these, or is it like going to completely alienate one or the other, just by me starting to, you know, change my website homepage towards one or the other?
Yeah.
Understanding those at least at that like 1 out of 12 level is so critical before you make any sort of change or launch any sort of new product or ad campaign or whatever it might be.
Yeah, this is a way to kind of like put that, talk about benefits versus features
Mhm.
in actions. Like
Yeah.
think about the archetypes. Are you speaking to the archetype that is your customer? So again, like, and the way to talk to them is that aspiration. Like, as again, the ruler being able to know that their stuff is safe, they have that peace of mind.
Yep.
And then again, peace of mind for the caregiver because they want to take care of the family, that peace
Yep.
of mind. You know, if the messaging is around that, you're probably on point. If it's about like how awesome and your proprietary system, you're off. Like you need to go back to the drawing board.
Yep. Yeah, and to the, you know, you mentioned the Nike example, coming back to that, like that aspirational value for them is like no matter who you are, like you kind of want to be, if you're the type of person that buys Nike, you want to be known as like taking action on a cause, whether that's just getting up and running every morning, whether
Mhm.
that's Colin Kaepernick, you know, like you want to be the champion of your actual sport, or you just want to be the champion of your day, or like, you know, your circle kind of looks up to you. You can even feel that in their app. Like it's about like sharing with other people that you did your run, and it's messaged in a way that you're like inspiring other people to run as well, not just necessarily a blatant look at me kind of scenario. There's not like a leaderboard that I'm aware of anywhere. Like I crushed all my friends this week. It's it's more aspirational that you might be inspiring somebody
To Conan the Barbarian
yeah,
board.
that's right.
The limitation of it.
And in the group chat, you can just tell all your friends they're lazy. So yeah, I mean, you can imagine like there's 100 different ways to kind of message a shoe company or even an app that's supposed to get you outside. But there's fits in that, and it doesn't alienate any part of the audience that you know, does want to be action oriented and kind of be viewed that way, probably by their friends or whoever they are influential to.
Yeah. Well, I think we're sufficiently boozed up where like we are at the point where we can pick our bone with those who don't use brand archetypes, thinking that it's too one-dimensional. Like, oh, I don't want to be like crammed into this box.
Yeah, yeah, we get that a lot, and I think that inevitably happens no matter what type of exercise, whether you use brand archetypes. This happens with personas. Like it's a little awkward.
Mhm.
We had a session yesterday where we kind of like you just almost make light of it, but you know, it's the quickest, most accurate way to understand who you are, who your competitors are, and who your different clients are. And otherwise, it's like I think you're always welcome to research for 5 years and
Mhm.
pull together data to try to get it exactly right. But that's not really the goal. It's not to get it exactly right. It's to understand there's about 12 general types of people. What are their motivations? Like how can my product or my service tap into that or not? And you can use them to help guide you to the right decisions. Like ultimately whether people buy from you or not will tell you whether you got that right. But
Yeah.
the alternative is often to not do anything like this. To just skip over archetypes or skip over personas, and that can't be better
Right.
than this.
Exactly.
You know, it's like we all
You're just
take
guessing in
the,
the dark at that point.
yeah, we all take the personality tests and things like that. It's funny, like I think people will do the Disney princess quiz. Like now on Instagram, they've got the thing, you're like holding it up, it's like which Disney character. We're all okay with that.
Yeah.
But if you kind of do it to apply to marketing, it does feel like a little limiting, you know, from a like ego standpoint, like we're all unique snowflakes, but
We should update the brand archetypes and make it about Disney brand princess archetypes.
yeah, which I don't understand at all. So
Yeah, I think we would do terribly
yeah,
at that,
yeah.
we're not very good at those.
But yeah, I think that's kind of the bone to pick, where it's like I think these things get nitpicked, and often things get nitpicked because they seem too rigid or whatever. But this is an exercise in making a really educated guess about who you can help, what you do, how what you do will resonate or not with them, and also just quickly understanding who you are as a brand, who your customers are, without spending a 2.5 hour meeting. We just hired Janet, and now we need to go through all this. It's like schedule 8 hours to do this deep dive.
Yeah.
You can just kind of lay this out there, and at least Janet's in a position to generally understand who you serve, who the business is quickly. And it's important to understand it quickly. Ultimately, you're going to iterate off these and get closer to the finish line anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'll stop grinding
the
my
rant
gears
there.
on
Yeah.
that. But I think it is a great exercise, especially to get some separation between this big mass that you might be targeting. Everyone's product tends to be for everyone when they first start, but it helps you kind of move into one lane or the other and at least have something to compare and contrast against, if nothing else. You may prove that you were wrong,
Yeah.
but at least you're proving something is wrong. And you don't get stuck in that trap of like, I need messaging for everyone.
Right. Yeah, and I think like what we recommend you with brand archetype, and what we're going to recommend to the audience here is, define the primary archetype for your brand and for your customers and for your competitors as well, but also identify a secondary archetype, right? This kind of starts to blend and realize, add a second dimension to people. An example would be like, I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm also a husband. So if there was a brand out there that recognized both of those things, a message to me, then I would feel like, oh, they're talking to me.
Yep.
So when you figure out what your brand archetype is, figure out what that second one is. An example of figuring out two is Tesla. They are a creator. Obviously, they're super innovative with their creations, with the car and the solar panels and everything else that they do. Their spaceships, but they're also very rebellious.
Yep.
They're rebellious. So they created that cyber truck that looks like it came out of like Blade Runner.
Yep.
That does not look like anything like a normal truck. The fact that they said yes to the tug of war with like Ford is kind of rebellious.
Yeah.
Like most companies, I think, would back down.
Yeah.
But like you can combine those two and create like a very uniquely distinctive brand that still feels like you.
Yeah.
And you can do that for your audience as well.
Yeah, they're a great example as well, because Tesla and Elon Musk are synonymous at this point, and I can't even remember the specifics, but he like got in trouble with the SEC or whatever for like tweeting or whatever it was.
He's supposed to join at some point too.
Potentially manipulating stuff, and it's like a lot of brands let go of their CEO at that point. I don't even know at this point, he might even just be on the board, but if you can imagine them like removing Elon Musk, like skill set aside as an engineer, salesperson, all the things that he is, pulling Elon Musk out of that brand, you have to then either change the whole brand by who you plug into that, because they have a rebellious sort of leader. And if you plug it in with like a more straight-laced CEO there, I think a lot of their fans would be confused, like, is this going to change now? So they're really interesting because they have this like literal person that created them and embodies everything that a lot of people that are fans of the brand are. That was an interesting thing to think about, like what happens if you remove this dude who actually personifies the brand.
Personifies it for sure.
Like it's different than like if GM does it. Like most people don't know who GM's CEO is, right? They're a long-standing brand. They've survived a lot of different leaders. They're a different type of thing. But Tesla is fascinating from that standpoint of like, eventually he'll be replaced one way or another. But if they had ruffled feathers and he was the CEO of GM or something, he's probably not anymore.
Right.
So just interesting that little rebellion kind of kept him in.
Yeah.
I would guess.
Right. an example further of like kind of doing two archetypes versus one is it's our bourbon right here.
That's right.
With Fox River. If we're thinking about their customers, probably the entertainer archetype because they are entertaining. They want to like be able to provide great booze, but also maybe a hero aspect in there too, where they're trying to empower a local business because they can just buy bourbon from anywhere, but they want to empower a local business like Ann Arbor Distillery. So that's like two archetype for one customer right there. So if you wrote messaging around that for Ann Arbor Distilling, then you're probably on good footing. And we'll send you that invoice sometime in the future. But make sure to give us at least some free booze. And we're good.
Yeah, one drink really. We're not great negotiators.
We're very good negotiators.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, those four things. Do those to kind of help yourself like build out a brand archetype. We're at the last drop of this wonderful bourbon here, so we're gonna leave you with a few things. Starting with a quote from the man himself, Peter Drucker. I wanted to read this because I've been drinking a little bit too much of this.
It's the last drop.
Yeah.
We'll let you off the hook.
So the aim of marketing is to know and understand the customer so well that the product or service fits him and sells itself. And it really just does sum up. I mean, we probably could have just started with that quote and just ended it there.
And then just like the end of the episode.
Just been drinking it the rest of the time. So that's the quote there to sum up like brand archetypes. If you get your brand archetype right, it's just you're going to sell yourself. Like they're going to connect to it. They're going to see themselves in the brand and really connect with you and build that brand loyalty that you need to be successful for now and into the future.
Yep. And I would say it's a worthwhile exercise, even if you're skeptical about it or you're busy with other things, which we all are. A lot of good questions will come out of it, even if you don't find all the answers, but you'll start to think about it in a different way, which I always appreciate as well.
Yeah. And may I ask, if somebody wanted to figure out what their brand archetype is, how could they go about doing that?
I don't know. Like, I personally don't know. You could maybe help us. But if there was some sort of a quiz or, any sort of lead magnet that was created, I would definitely give really anything. I mean, I would give anything to have something like that exist.
There might be one in the link below.
Holy shit.
Nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
Absolutely nailed it.
Yeah. And Huck Finch delivering like no
value, baby.
In the most transparent setup in the history of web television.
You knocked that out, man. We both did. Full on home run.
Absolutely. So there'll be a link, obviously a button, something you can press to do this. If you're into the Disney quizzes we mentioned, you can do it for that. But you could also do it in a way that is really helpful for your business. It's also not that time consuming, high ROI on this type of thing. So
yeah.
So check it out. Let us know what didn't work about it, what did, and also let us know what questions we can answer in the future about brand archetypes or anything else that might be on your mind.
Yeah, and make sure to also share your brand archetypes below if you already have one. Once you take our amazing out of this world quiz, share it below. Let us know. We would love to know what your archetypes are, your primary and your secondary. So yeah, with that said, cheers. Until next time, folks.
Cheers. We'll see you again. Thanks for watching another episode of Bourbon and Brand. Be sure to leave your questions in comments below so we can get to them in a future episode.
And make sure to subscribe to the show by clicking subscribe below and turn on the bell to get notified of all future episodes of the greatest freaking show about bourbon and branding. Cheers.